Thank you for having me here today. My name is Yvonne Magnusson, and I have 30 years of work experience within FMCG, consumer and retail. I worked almost 20 years as a CEO for different local and international companies in different settings. So I'm happy to be here and share some of my experiences within the retail area. We talk about Scandinavia, but I would like to include also, when we talk about Scandinavia, we talk about Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. But my experience is also when you do business here in this Nordic region, you almost always include Finland and Iceland. So I will emphasize the Nordic region today. And there are some characteristics. We are 29 million inhabitants, if you could include also Finland and Iceland. Sweden is by far the biggest market with about 12 million inhabitants. So Stockholm being in the heart of the Nordic region is special from that perspective. We also have about 4.5 million households also in Sweden. And of course, then it's a little lower when you go to Finland, in Norway and Denmark and Finland. But it's also interesting to understand that. What's also interesting to look into, many of you perhaps do business in the European Union in some way. But also looking into the population, we have a higher growth here in the Nordic region. And just to give, if you compare to EU. And for Sweden, it's on an index 105, and it's even higher in Norway. So we are growing in terms of population here in the Nordic region. We also, what's characteristic is that we have a lot high share of population living in the cities. About 30% if you go to Sweden, Norway and Denmark live in big cities. Slightly lower in Finland. And that is also important to understand when you look into establishing here in this region. Aging population, but we're also a rich region, so we have high disposable income and also high GDP, where actually Norway has the highest, followed by Sweden. And of course, one of the reasons for it, we also have a low unemployment rate as well compared to many other countries. And I think also it's important to look into the geography, because we have a high concentration to many cities. We have a lot of land, and I will come back to that when it comes to logistics challenges here in this region. What's also important to understand when you talk retail and the consumer market is the digital penetration that we have here in the Nordic region. We have the highest internet usage in the world, actually. 95% are regularly online. And also doing business in the mobile device is very important here. So that means you also have to consider your channel strategy. In Sweden, the mobile commerce accounts for 65%. And we actually have 20 million shoppers online here. That means also that the revenue coming out of the e-commerce is the online shoppers are very high. In 2023, I don't have figures for 2024 yet, but in 2023, Sweden e-commerce revenue was $14 billion. So it's a significant number coming out of that business. Also, to understand the sustainability, 60% of the Nordic consumers prioritize actually sustainability when they make their purchasing decisions. So it is high on the agenda for many. Looking into specific retail trends, even if the online business is very mature here in general, omnichannel. The omnichannel strategy is still of very high importance, where actually 70% of the established retail companies operate in an omnichannel business model. that is also something to consider if you're looking into establishing this market. I'm not going to go into details when it comes to legal and regulatory considerations because they differ between what countries. But I want to highlight a few things here. And Sweden, all countries here in the Nordic are part of the European Union except for Norway. So it's important to have that in mind. Of course, we are all under the EU legislation in different ways, but there are local interpretations. And I think the 4 areas to really dig into to start out with are related to consumer protection laws, data protection laws, taxation regulations, and import regulations. And just to give you an example, my last position as a CEO, I was for a Swedish retail company, Independia. We had an e-commerce in Norway. So what we did was we set up, we had all our incoming merchandise going into the harbor in Gothenburg. We had a warehouse on the west coast. But we set up a special custom warehouse in our regular warehouse to handle the Norwegian market specifically. So, I mean, there are ways, but you need to take that into consideration on how you set up your business here locally with when it comes to Norway. I have a lot of experience, so I worked in different models and also in different ways when you work in international settings, you can work with different entry strategies. I operated in all of these 4 different that I mentioned here. There are others ways, or you can mix them. But I just want to highlight to really take into consideration, and being a Swede, we like the planning, as you just heard. So it's good to really consider which way you want to enter the market, what strategy you will have when you enter the market, because it will save you a lot of cost and headache if you are clear in mindset. And of course, the most simple way is exporting, and that is commonly used by retailers. And sometimes they set up just a warehouse here solution for the logistics. And of course, establishing a subsidiary, then you have full control of your business and you have your own staff and so on. So depending on category and size of company, these are different models that you can operate within. And going back to, as my theme was related to retail, and also considering the omnichannel, looking at the physical store, it's important also to understand that when you want to establish a physical retail store here in the Nordic region, of course, you look into the big cities, capital cities to start out with. And that's very relevant, of course, because that's normally where you have the footfall and the purchasing power. Now I don't know from all the countries you represent here, but here in the Nordic region we have a very high proximity when it comes to public transportation, especially in our capital cities. So it's also important to understand when you do or where you do the establishment. All of these important considerations you have to do with when you look into the Nordic shoppers. And so transportation is important, and also just looking at AAA locations. Of course, in these days, I would really suggest you to take some local advice. There are really good consultants or firms that operate and help international companies establish themselves here locally, that has a local knowledge of exactly where you can find a local place, because going wrong in this is very costly if you work in retail, and you all understand that. But I would also like to stress the the opportunity actually to go into other rural areas in the Nordic. We have, and especially if you work in omnichannel, because that makes it easy with shop online, purchase online, and also pick up in store opportunities. So, but of course, when you go to a smaller city, look into different formats and so that you don't overwhelmed by resources in these situations. Also important to understand about the Nordic customers is we are very digital, as I mentioned before. So the Nordic customer expects you to have all of this in place in terms of payment solutions, logistical solutions, and so on. And also, when it comes to design of the concept, it has to be visually appealing also. There are many areas, of course, that is important to consider, but I want to stress the most important ones, and therefore logistics and delivery. If you operate in this business, you know how important it is to have a solid solution here, be cost efficient. So looking at the last mile, it's there are some differences between the countries. If you go to Sweden, the most common delivery method is service points, which is preferred by about 46% of the consumers here in Sweden. Then home delivery is also very popular, and especially in the urban areas. But service points are still the dominant choice. If you go to Norway, it's quite similar to Sweden. So service points are widely used, but also their home delivery is growing in terms of preference, particularly when it comes to larger items. And in both countries, the parcel lockers are gaining also in popularity. In Denmark, it's a little different, where home delivery is the preferred option. And that's also reflecting the country, dense population and efficient logistical network. And as a second choice, click and collect services are very popular. Looking at Finland, it's different, where parcel lockers are the most favored solution. And there Finland is leading in this, so you have to consider that depending on your category, of course. And then service points and home delivery are also commonly used. If you work with logistics, you understand that you need to monitor your supply chain costs, of course, and therefore also looking into the geography here. Consider that when you look into how to set up your logistical solutions. We also have going back to sustainability, there are very good solutions when it comes to carbon neutral shipping options. What the consumers are very used to and expect from you, or otherwise you will lose your ticket. When it comes to payment solutions, it's also important to understand that we have a high decline in cash usage. In Sweden, as an example, we only use it's only 15% that actually use cash today. So have that in consideration looking into how you do your business here. The most common use is card payments. So I think about 60 to 75%, depending on the country, of the level that is used in terms of card payments. We also see an increase in mobile payments. Like I mentioned before, the mobile shopping is very high. It's about 65% in Sweden specifically, but it's high in all countries. So having that in place, and there are different solutions depending on country, Swish, mobile pay, Vips, and so on. And we also see an increase in digital wallets like Access Pay, Google Pay, and Samsung Pay. So have that in mind also when you do the setup. Of course, when we are so online based, of course, we all use digital media today. So I just want to stress that when we are here in the Nordic region, we are the most digitally connected in the world. And to be successful here, you must focus on your digital marketing, of course, but tailor it to the Nordic consumers and emphasize transparency, sustainability, and quality. So even if the Nordic customers are very used to shop online on international sites, they prefer the local options. So translating into the local language and local adaptations is really important to consider. So I mean, it's worthwhile. And today with the technology, with AI and so on, it's quite easy also to do that. So to conclude what I have talked about, I think that the Nordic region is very interesting for several points mentioned already, but to summarize it, we have a high purchasing power here. We have stable economies, and that's even more important now looking out in the global surrounding. Also with an innovative population makes this region very interesting for testing as a test market. And I worked even when I started my career with Unilever, we used the Nordic region as a test market. So it's very perfect for new launches. And also with this digital maturity, together with this we also have a very high standard of digital infrastructure, makes it also easy to test and adapt different online solutions. And also if you are outside Europe, entering Europe, I also think that the Nordic has a strategic location and is a possible gateway to Europe, considering the factors that I just mentioned. So with excellent logistic solutions as well here, it makes it a great market asset. So successfully entering here in the Nordic market requires a nuanced approach. We just heard about cultural differences to consider. With respect those local values, adapt to cultural norms and meet the high expectations of the Nordic customers, and you are going to be very successful here. So thank you for me, and I'm really looking forward to talk with you further and in more depth if you have any questions. And I'm also very interested in hearing about your plans. Well, thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Mikael, the founder and the CEO of Inonom. So I can give you the microphone and the floor.
Yes. You know, I have one of the best job you can have. Almost every day I have the chance to speak to tech companies that want to grow international. And you might wonder, what's the question they're all asking? Can you give me the secret recipe for growing my business in Scandinavia or Sweden? Of course. And I'm always telling them, of course, I would love to give it to them if I had it. It's not always that simple as you might think. So, all right. So what is the road for Scandinavia? I'm usually working with tech companies, a lot of software companies, a lot of hardware companies. And as you heard, I mean, they all want to have the secret key to get into Scandinavian market. And I have been, during the 3.5 years, I've had my own company, been coaching more than 100 tech executives. It's almost 150 now. So from 16 different countries. So I have learned a few patterns that I would like to share with you. You know, my journey started 25 years ago, where I had the opportunity and the first assignment to help a French company to grow into Sweden. And they were doing mobile base stations. They had a fantastic product. And they told me that they wanted to get in here. I thought, I'm going to help them with that. So they said that, you know, we're going to be very aggressive. So we're going to help you. You're going to have a fast journey into the Nordics because we don't have time to wait. We really want that. So we're going to take the best price we ever sold for, and then we're going to deduct it with 10%. And I thought, this is fantastic. You know, I'm going to be so rich. I can see how easy it would be to sell those base stations in Sweden. And I booked meetings with all the customers, with Telia, Tele2, and all of the mobile operators here, presented the products and said, yeah, it's a good product. What about the price? I thought, great, now the deal is almost signed. Well, the price turned out that even if it was the lowest and a little bit lower than that this company ever sold for, we were 3 times more higher than they were already purchased for. And I realize now that Sweden was a very competitive market. It was a very competitive marketplace. It wasn't that easy. Well, did I sell? Yes, I actually sold a lot. Was it easy? No, it was not easy. Did it take time? It took me 2 years before I signed the first deal. But then I sold quite a lot. So it wasn't as easy, and I didn't become as rich as I wanted, really. So, and since then I've been working with tech companies for different big ones, small ones, and international sales, both in and out of Sweden. And 3.5 years back, I'm working as my single consultants and supporting companies that want to grow in the international markets. Is it easy? No, it's not. The failure rate when going international is very high. It's very, very high. It's been 16, sometimes to 90%. Why? Well, it's natural. You're going to a new market. You don't know the competition there. You don't know the culture. You don't know what is expecting you, and you're not adopting. The most common cases when people call me is that they are in a hurry, especially in the end of the year. They say, you know, we just want to do some quick numbers. There's no quick numbers to be done here. It takes time, and it's a different market. Of course, this is true for all markets. So, and they all ask, please give me the secret key. Well, it's not just one key that you need to do. And what I see, it's actually 8. You need to be an octopus with 8 different arms and 8 different things to be done. And what's all those 8 things? Well, what I have seen, and based on the people I'm working with, is that you do need to understand the value of the market. You need to understand the needs and the potential there's there. You need to be able to execute the plan, because sales and marketing is super expensive. And if you're not using your resources right, you're going to spend it a lot without getting nothing. You need to be able to build new relationships, and we heard about this culture differences and in different ways of building relationships. You need to be able to understand where the opportunities are so you don't focus on the wrong things. And you need to be making yourself relevant. And quite often, and a lot of the customers I'm using, they don't understand this about environmental policies. And as we heard before, I mean, sustainability and environmental policies is super important in retail and also other. If you don't understand that, you might not even be considered. I also have customers and clients that are very good on the marketing side. They are here. They are doing a lot of MQLs, but then they can't close the deals. Then something happens in the end of the buying journey. And also navigating legal requirements. It's not just legal, it's also compliance overall about how you do things. If you compare a legal agreement in UK, it's super, super thick, while in Sweden it's very, very thin, because we don't need it here. In Swedish law, we rather regulate the intention. So we don't need to write a lot of paper, and trust is very common. Sometimes we don't write agreements at all even. And really to establish a local brand, you know, how do you scale? What partners do you need? Those that are successful are using partners. It's very few of them that are successful alone, growing in the Scandinavian market. So when I start working with new clients, I've seen that it's very good that we start to understand where are you strong and where do you need to be better. So we do a diagnosis, and when I started, I did this diagnosis based on Excel with a sliding bar. Now I have recently started to work with AI. So this is something that is on ChatGPT, and you can do it and get all the analysis. So it's a self-assessment rating, and the customers are rating themselves. Sometimes they rate themselves too high, sometimes they rate themselves too low. But it doesn't matter. The most important is that you define your weak and strength. And then we usually get this plotted in a number of ways. So you can see a heat map, you can see a profile, you can see where's my strengths and where are my weaknesses, where do I maybe need to complement. And then we focus and build an action plan on what you need to do. And for the companies I've been working with, and the companies that have used this tool it's a very efficient tool. It's 49. You can see the average rating is about 4.66 of 10. So there's definitely improvement areas. And what do they think is the most difficult? The most difficult things is what they say is to building and executing a go-to-market plan. And the second most biggest thing that they think is difficult is to navigate the legal requirement. Then you can see there's a number of different things about how to build relationships and so on. And the things that I think is the strongest is to understand the market. But still, it's overall low figures. So it's definitely, and some companies are very high, some companies are very low, and the profiles looks very different. But it's a very good diagnostic tool to understand what you can do about it. It's a good starting point. And I use that with all my clients when we start a new relationship, because then we can focus our efforts on what is needed. And I think this is good news, because when you know the problem, you can fix it. And my message is really about be aware. A new market may and often require different capabilities and different ways of acting. So really try to make in-depth analysis of what your profile is, what your strengths are, and your weaknesses, and fix your weaknesses. If you can't fix your weaknesses, find someone else, work with someone else, a partner that has the strengths and the muscles that you need. And build a go-to-market plan. Don't waste your expensive sales and marketing resources. Try to work in a structured way. And also the final point, plan for success. Plan the party. Plan what you're going to do with all the money you get when you get rich. And why is that so important? Well, too many companies I'm working with, they say, we're going to try. I'm hoping for the best. It's not good enough. If you're a high jumper and if you're going to jump over a fence, can you doubt for success? No, of course. You need to think, you need to believe that you can do it. Otherwise, the risk is high that you're going to fail. You need to be confident about it. And that's what I'm saying. Plan for the success. Book the restaurant or whatever you're going to do. And don't give up, because it's going to come hard times, especially in the end of the year when we see where we are on the budgets and so on. Need to believe it. And I'm also have an announcement to make. I'm also working on a event in May, in 17th of May, on specifically for cybersecurity. It's going to be held in Epicenter. So if anybody here is super excited about cybersecurity, please tell me, and I would like to invite you to our free of charge event at Epicenter. And by that, I think my 12 minutes plus is ended. So super excited to talk to you afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mikael. It was a great presentation, and thank you very much for handling the difficulties so well. Now we are back on track, and again, I couldn't agree more with what Mikael said. From my perspective, it's better to know what you are doing and then be consistent for at least some time. If you don't know what you are doing, then you will be changing your decisions, and that is basically a recipe for failure. Once you know what you are doing and you are consistent, then you might be successful. And once I heard a nice sentence, even if you are walking through hell, keep walking. You know, one day you will you will go out, right? All right, let's move on, and now this is the time for Mats Thuresson and Thomas Birkendahl from Latitud Consulting.
All right, thank you for having us today. So, yeah, we're from Latitud Consulting, and we're going to be talking about expanding your business to Sweden through M&A, and hopefully share some insights and key considerations for successful market entry. Just a short introduction. I'm Thomas Birkendahl. I'm a partner at Latitud Consulting. Prior to that, I spent 20 years in the staffing and recruitment industry. I had a part in turning a small startup into a well-functioning and profitable staffing company, which I left a year and a half ago. My experience is from both the Nordics, but also from Southeast Asia, actually, where I started established a branch office, a local branch office, about 10 years ago. During my career, I worked with many different business cultures. So very interesting to hear about the differences between the Polish and the Swedish business culture, which we also will come back to in a while. Mats, a few words about you. Oh, yeah, you need this one, sorry.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Mats Thuresson, and after a few years in the Swedish Navy, I spent the rest of my career in a big Swedish telco company. And I made a career out of career killers. I basically worked with things that no one else that is sane wants to touch.
All right, so yes, a brief introduction to Latitud Consulting, who we are. We offer strategic advisory, specializing in enhancing growth and profitability. Mats and I, we are 2 out of 4 partners. The others are Niklas, who's here as well, and Ulf. I don't know if you're here or if you're stuck in the Swedish Railway. No, you're here now. There you are, in the back. Thank you, Ulf. Good to see you. And together, the 4 of us, we have vast experience in above all, M&A, finance, IT, project management, and business development. And we bring local expertise to the table, both regarding, for Sweden, but the whole of Scandinavia. And also just a few words about our name, why we call ourselves Latitud Consulting. So Latitud is the Swedish word for latitude, and in Swedish there's another word also for it, which is breadgrad, and that word signifies a broadness, and for us as well a kind of a wide range perspective. We take a comprehensive approach, offering end-to-end advisory services rather than specializing in one specific niche. We do, however, collaborate with a lot of specialized consultants who provide the deep expertise in specific areas when needed, and we call them our longitude partners. So this way we ensure that our clients benefit from both the strategic broadness as well as the expert depth. All right, in the next slide, some of these things have already been mentioned. We also put the word stable in here in this slide. Don't really know if that makes sense nowadays with everything that's going on in the world, in the economies and the politics. But anyway, we agree also with, I think it was you who said it, I mean, Sweden offers a stable economy. Despite all, I would say it's relatively stable. It's transparent, doesn't offer too many surprises, innovation driven. We have the EU market access, strong exporting tradition, which means also that we have good relationships with other economies. We also see that, well, some of the sectors that drive M&A activity are technology, energy, industrials, manufacturing, life sciences, which we learned about a couple of weeks ago here at the Chamber at a very good event that was held here. I think it was in February. Another example, we know that Sweden has ambitious goals for the green energy. I think Sweden wants to be climate neutral by the year 2045 and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 85% compared to 1990 by the same time. So that will for sure drive a lot of activity in related sectors. And then when it comes to the ease of doing business, well, as I mentioned, I myself, I established a business in the Philippines a couple of years ago, 10 years ago. That was everything else than easy. A lot of hurdles that I met. Corruption was one. And compared to that, I must say that Sweden must be a piece of cake. But, and I think we also rank pretty high in global studies regarding that. But it was also mentioned before that there are also hurdles and obstacles in Sweden, regulations, and a degree of bureaucracy. So that needs to be taken into consideration, which also leads us to some of the key challenges for foreign companies that we could see. So understanding these local regulations and compliance frameworks that can be very complex and it requires its due diligence for new entrants to the market. And we also believe that well, you need a local network to find the right acquisition target. Labor laws, I have my share of experience with that. The labor laws are very protective in Sweden. And as mentioned before, also the tax structures may be different from what other European countries may have. And yeah, and then of course the culture. We learned that there are differences, and I think we also know that Swedish culture is known to be consensus-driven. That may affect negotiating deals and the decision-making speed. Something to consider it and be aware of. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to Mats.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Looking at key considerations, I mean, first of all, identifying a target. I'm here going to assume that you are in control of your strategy and know where you're buying things. We heard some comments about that before, but sometimes if you just happen to buy something because it's for sale and stand there with, you know, a target, then you may need even more help, but we leave that aside. We touched on legal finance, labor law, etc. That's difficult or challenging. Cultural, touch on that before. But I think now when you have bought your, your target, then it's about knowing how to go about it. And that's my specialty, working with integration. Next slide, please. And yeah, success and failure. Of course, we plan for success. Booked the restaurant already. And so you need to establish a plan. And one thing here, right price. I'm not going to talk about actually what you paid, but what you need to make sure, I'm quite sure you have a board or an owner or your own pocket that want to make sure that 1 + 1 is bigger than 2. And we had some comments about where to focus, if it's sort of detailed plans or if you go about it broadly. But I think being Sweden and sort of time focused and detail focused and all that stuff, I've anyway landed in that what you need to focus on are really the big things. That's creating value and your customer, because it's so it's so big risks that you start focusing on your integration, your plan, your tools, your methods, your follow-ups, etc. So you forget the customer, and then they may be gone. And your case, how much was it? 60 to 90% failure rate. And establish your plan, and then also monitor that things starting to happen the way you want it. That's super important. So you know what you're about to do, you need a firm plan, and you need to make sure you focus on the right things. Next slide, please, Thomas. And how to succeed then? Well, some of you already said it, but find local advisors that you have trust in. force them together. It's obvious that sometimes you work with different advisors, but force them to work together. You need to be a little clever about that one. And cultural. I mean, we heard 12 minutes of cultural advice here, but I did some reading myself. And what I read is that Swedes, we are very group-oriented. And from a Polish point of view, that comes across as indecisiveness and sometimes weakness. And we don't want that to happen, do we? So the cultural part here, I mean, it cannot be underestimated if you want to make sure that you're going to be successful. So it's key to have the plan. And I would, just to summarize, 1 + 1 must be bigger than 2. That's what you're measured upon. And focus on the value creation and the customer. And make sure that you have a plan. And finally, adding something that came up earlier, compliance. Before, we didn't really mind that much about it, but now we have compliance in general, but also the EU legislation. So that has become a biggie. And I slipped into that the last 4 years in my previous jobs. I spent the last 4 years digging into how make big corporates globally compliant. And when you lift that lid, it's bigger than you may have ever expected. Thomas, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mats. There's a lot more to be said about all that, of course, but again, we only have 12 minutes, so time to wrap it up. So yeah, Latitud Consulting, how we believe that we can help you with all this is, well, of course, the sooner we get involved, the better our chances to provide a holistic view in the early planning, which we believe is very important, and outline different scenarios for a successful process. However, we are able to, we can also step in help you during the whole process or parts of the process. And what we want to highlight and emphasize is what Mats also talked about is the post-merger phase and the importance of a solid post-deal strategy. And that is, we believe that we can help to, capitalize all those synergies and advantages and possibilities that you saw before you signed the deal, and really make sure that it happens and that you are successful. Right.
I want just to add here, sure, to avoid that you end up being the 60 to 90% that destroys value. I think that's shocking numbers that we heard here. Yeah. And I have other statistics saying that 70-75% of M&As are unsuccessful. So a good plan, monitor, and focus on value creation and customers.
Exactly, and do the right thing at the right time. With the right people. So we can also help you with resource management, provide talent and interim management if that is needed. So basically be your partner from the very start to the finish line and beyond. To close, just a closing remark to summarize what we said. We do believe that Sweden offers great opportunities, and that strategic preparation and local knowledge is key for success. And we do believe that M&A is a strong entry method. We learned about other methods as well here today, but we choose to talk about M&A. And if you want to learn more about us and how to do it that way, please visit our homepage, latitudconsulting.se. There are supposed to be 2 flags there, but it's SEGB means it's available in Swedish and English. And of course, you are welcome to reach out to any of us. We're all here today. Either today or later at a later stage. Contact details are available, and we are so happy to be here today, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mats and Thomas. It was very, very interesting. Last year, when I was giving the little speech here at the Market Entry Sweden event, I finished it with a little anecdote, and I thought it will actually fit here right now. when we are talking about partnership, working together, and winning together. So I was actually once picking up my son from the kindergarten, and he doesn't know much of the Polish culture. He was like being brought up more into the Swedish culture, and then at some point I asked him, maybe we should race who's going to win first at the gate. And then he looked at me, took my hand, and said, "Daddy, let's win together." And this was a cultural shock for me. Because I wanted to compete with him and he wanted to win together, and that was a shock. And at that moment, and in that case, my son was my cultural teacher. And then I realized that we cannot just work ourselves. We need to find partners, we need to build networks, we need to work together in order to win together. But now, moving on to the next part about the EU-based subcontracting, I would like to invite Ott Kerstna. Sorry for butchering the name.
Hello, very nice to be here. So let's get straight to the point. I am going to talk about some things that I think foreign contractors should keep in mind when they enter the Swedish construction sector the first time. A little bit about me. I founded the company Neffi in order to help specifically foreign contractors who entered the Swedish market, because at previous places of work I saw how difficult it could be for foreign contractors to get things done here, to get papers done, to understand the tax issues and all of such things. So I decided to focus solely on that. I have been living in Sweden for 20 years, currently live in Estonia, and I was educated in business. And because of this, I'm also trilingual, so this made it possible for me to have this kind of middleman role between Swedish clients and foreign contractors. And it really is a passion of mine to help honest foreign contractors to succeed here, because I often see that foreign contractors can get painted in a pretty bad light, that they don't follow Swedish regulations, that they pay slave wages and so on. And I just see a completely different picture. So the three things I'm going to talk about is, well, most of it has been said already, but repetition is the key to learning. So let's continue with that. I recommend foreign contractors to have a very detailed battle plan before entering Sweden, to accept that Sweden is different in many ways, and to always have a plan B. And I have also underlined to always keep in mind the local unions, because if you're a Swedish contractor and you work on any bigger projects, then it's very, very likely you will have to deal with them. So, battle plan is a bit dramatic name for this, but it comes from the fact that it can quite often be a bit of a battle, because to carry out a Swedish construction project, there are just so many factors that I don't see considered, especially in the initial phase. Usually my customers are very worried about price, that the Swedish client offers a good price, but there are just so many more factors that make a project viable or not. There are such things like cross-border tax issues, union requirements, if you sell just labor or product together with labor, what union you're going to deal with, if the client who is ordering from you is solvent and a good client. I mean, we all know what happened to Norfolk. They let the foreign contractors down first. And so many such things. So my point with creating a battle plan is not just to focus on price, but also keep in mind all these other factors. And before making any dramatic initial investments like buying a new company or paying a lot of money to have contracts drafted, know your total costs and all factors to really accurately compare the price that is offered by a Swedish potential client. And if it's too low, renegotiate or say no. Second part is that Sweden is different and you have to deal with it. This advice is for those who have just started or are into a project a couple of months. there are usually things that my clients can complain about, which is, well, it's understandable, but that's the way it is. Some examples are how the unions operate, how they are slow, how they want to negotiate about everything, how they want everything in their frames and structures, how we have Swedish crowns here and the currency fluctuates, how no one talks about net salary, the post is delayed, etc., etc. This isn't going to change. So just know in advance and accept and try to see the positive things about Sweden. For example, their focus on quality, work site safety issues, that they take pride in not having but as few deaths as possible, that there are no regular strikes here. And just know that Sweden is different. So deal with it. And the third thing I want to focus on is to always have a plan B. I think that sometimes Swedes have this reputation of being very honest and open and doing things by the book, but it can also affect you negatively, especially doing things by the book, that they do it too much by the book. And if you don't know what the book is, then you can get a bit screwed if things are going badly. For example, if a Swedish client has solvency issues, then you might find yourself in a situation where you don't get paid, but you're still offered extra work. And yes, we will pay, it will come, don't worry. Unions might make unannounced visits, and if your paperwork isn't in order, if your pre-work isn't in order, then your work can stop very abruptly. I have seen many cases where foreign contractors thought that everything was fine. They worked 1, 2, even 3 years, and then suddenly someone did an audit, and it turned out things were not so good, and they had to pay big fines or redo paperwork, and everything was shut down. And it can happen really fast. So you always need to have a plan B. You can't be too stuck on one project. You can't expect things never to go wrong. I don't know how long I've talked, but it feels like 2 minutes. But I am already at the end of this presentation, so I'll just 2.5. So I will just repeat that: make a detailed battle plan in advance. Know what the whole project means for you, all factors. Accept the fact that Sweden is different. That's just the way it is. Take it with a cup of coffee and Fika, I don't know, and have a plan B. Expect things to go wrong and have an answer for this. And never underestimate the local unions. You will probably have to deal with them. So, thank you very much. If you have any more questions after the presentation, I'd love to talk to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. That was quick, but that's good because we need to catch up. Talking about transparency and the salary and expectations and how Swedes communicate that. Actually, I have another maybe anecdote or a story from my experience when I was recruiting in Poland and I asked about the financial expectations to the candidates during the interviews. They usually started with high level, and then we could negotiate it a little bit to, let's say, market standard. But my shock was here when I was recruiting in Sweden, and pretty much 99.9% of the candidates asked about the salary expectation. They said, "Now I have this much," which is basically end of negotiation because they just put every information on the table. It's like, well, there's no fun. I mean, and then I realized that really everything is transparent. You can always check how much people pay taxes, so ergo, how much they pay, etc., etc. There is no differences between, let's say, profiles, or it's like once you are, I don't know, software developer with 5 years of experience, you know more or less what to expect, and this is the market standard. So why bother and negotiate? And everything is clear. Let's move on. Jenny Petters, business growth officer from Food Collective.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Welcome everyone this afternoon. My name is Jenny Petters. I'm from Food Collective. And we are consultants in the food and beverage industry. And as we've heard quite some presentations already, it's going to be some repetition, but I think that's good in some way. I try to make it as relatable to food and beverage market as much as possible. So as consultants, we work with both strategic projects, but also with hands-on operation and everything in between. So from the idea that you say, I want to export to Sweden or to the Nordics, up until selling your products in the Swedish market and all the steps you need to come there. So starting with the negative things, we often see quite some pitfalls with companies trying to enter a new market in general, if it's Sweden or some other market. But insufficient market research is one of the biggest pitfalls, but also ignoring competitive analysis. Also insufficient budget, poor timing, and neglecting customer feedback. But how can we avoid this? First, if you start with a market research, we also call this a go-to-market plan. I've heard it earlier today. You can understand how your product offerings can adjust to the market, how it's going to be a market fit. But also, if you understand your competition, you know where is my product going to be placed in the market, depending on what channels you're going to launch in. But launching to a new market also comes with a budget. You can't just push your product and hope it's going to fly. That's not going to work, unfortunately. So you need to invest in a launch campaign, marketing, sales force, etc. Timing, maybe your product is related to trends. Maybe it's too early for the consumers, or maybe already the trend is on top, so you're too late to introduce. Or neglecting customer feedback. You really need to listen, especially in the launching phase, to what your consumers think of your product, so you can still adjust it. Maybe you need to do a test panel before even launching. Because maybe in Poland, people like your product, but Swedes have a different taste of flavor. So we have developed this launch process. We say it takes approximately 9 to 12 months or even longer, but I would say minimum 9 months. And in the past 5 years in Food Collective's existence, we've seen that this increases the chance of success. We've seen that up until 90% of the new market introductions can fail. So how to increase your chance to have a successful product launch? So to start with a market study to analyze the market, but also competitors, consumers, what's their behavior, where do they go and shop, what's their demographics. I will go a little bit deeper into detail in the rest of the presentation. But then from the moment you decide to move on to the Swedish market, you need to prepare your company, your products, but also maybe scale up production before even presenting to customers. And in Sweden, it works a bit different than in the rest of Europe or other countries. So you need to prepare some things like we call it listing your products in Swedish retail, for example, before you even go to pitch your products to the clients. But also what clients are you going to pitch to, because not all clients are suitable for your products. Then you get a decision, a go or a no-go, and then you need to prepare for an excellent launch. So maybe translations are needed, another packaging, maybe you will redesign. And then you need to build distribution. So how are you going to set that up? Are you going to deliver directly from your production site? Or are you going to have a warehouse in Sweden? And then also from the launch onwards, you need to invest in promotions, building distribution as in your product's going to sell in an X number of stores or selling points, but also the end consumer needs to know that your product is in the market. So as said, I want to dive more in detail on the first part, the market study. To identify the market and competition. first of all, your target group. Who is going to be that end consumer? Who is going to eat or drink your products in food and beverage? So your target audience analysis is related to both demographics and characteristics. I have another slide on that, but also geographical. Where do they live? And what do they prefer? What is their family? What does their family look like? Do they shop just for themselves if it's single households, or do they have kids and a family? Or are they quite young or a bit older? Then the importance of customer understanding. So what do they do in daily life? Do they work? Do they study? Such things. That defines how much time they spend in the kitchen or where they go out and eat in a restaurant, for example. So this together is conducting the market research, but also in a later step, gathering the customer feedback. And this slide is a little bit of repetition, but in Sweden, as you know, we have 10 to 11 million inhabitants. Life expectancy is quite high, as you know, but we have a very high rate of single households. So that can, if you think of packaging design, it's very important to keep that in mind. But also how old people in general are, and the urbanization. I'm not just talking about cities, but urban areas. Most people live in urban areas in Sweden. Then zoom a bit into the retail market, or in general the market, how it is in food and beverages. 65% of the market is represented out of retail. So we have the three biggest, ICA, Coop and Axfood, with each their banners. As an example, ICA has both Maxi, Quantum, Supermarket and Nära, which is reflecting the size of the store in square meters, but also where the store in a city or a smaller city, for example, is located. The Maxi is sometimes a little bit closer to a highway, where the ICA Nära, it's more like a local store with a smaller assortment, but it's close to the consumer. And so also the other retailers have their own banners. And then you also have Lidl, maybe you know it from Poland as well. Then food service is about 35% of the market. And here I've showed 4 of the biggest in food service. And some of them focus more on private label or on branded products. So that's a difference when you identify your clients. And here are the food service markets. So those shop at the ones at the previous slide, for example. So depending on if your end consumers go to a hotel or to restaurants, shop in travel or fast food, that's depending on how your product offer is going to look like. So these are a lot of different chains in each channel within food service. But what about the consumer? So food is the third biggest expenditure in Sweden. And Swedes, they spend about 12% of their monthly budget on food. And what food they spend it on is, we call it colonial in Swedish, but it's more like dry products. That's coming after other food products, followed by dairy, meat, fruit and vegetables. And on the right-hand side, you see on a report from about 2 years ago, the top 10 meals eaten in a weekend. You see tacos on number 1, reflecting Taco Friday in Sweden. So think of such small but very important cultural differences. Also, top consumer trends. As you might think before, that price is not the biggest decision maker for Swedes. I think we see that the past years, mostly due to inflation, the amount or the percentage of what people buy on discount in retail, for example, has increased quite a lot. But also Swedes, they really think health and sustainability is super important. We call it the LOHAS consumer group, which is Life of Health and Sustainability. And in Sweden, we have the highest rate of this LOHAS consumer in the whole world. So it's super important to think of such. It's even more important to think of your own health and the planet than choosing for organic. And convenience, as said, depending on what consumer you focus on, Swedes on average, so some people do less, some people do more, spend on average 33 minutes in the kitchen on a day. And that's not too much. So maybe they spend more time on cooking big portions on the weekends and less on work days. And also super local. As said, this is more important than organic. In this season, I've seen it in the supermarkets. Think of strawberries from Sweden. Even if they are double as expensive, people want to buy those and not the ones from abroad. And then digitalization and automation in retail, not just in the warehouses of the retailers and food service. A lot is being automated, but also each grocery store channel has their own app, and you can save recipes, and based on those recipes, you can make a shopping list. But also delivering at home or pre-filling your like what you want to order and getting it in a store instead of spending time to find it on the shelves. So before you go, we have a checklist here. I think it's good to go through this. But as said, we are consultants supporting food and beverage companies, so we can support with either whole the process or parts of it. Do thorough market research, so go-to-market plan, very comprehensive, based on data you will later on need for presenting to customers, because they will ask questions, how does this product fit to the market? But also know what certificates are required, and you think within Europe it's all same, but not exactly, because there might be some slight differences. Think of vitamins or how you display such allergies on packaging. And do not make assumptions here, but hire a professional, like an agency who is specialized in food safety, for example. The launch process is, I would say, minimum 9 months long, so don't expect if you start today that next month you will be in the supermarkets, unfortunately. But that makes so that only the ones who do the proper market research and prepare will make it to the end of the process. Understand your business case, not just in the beginning before the process, but also after launching. You need to recalculate, for example, with valuta changes, it might differ with transport, it's getting more costly every year. You need to redo this regularly. And on retail, I would say it's very important to think of the launching windows. You only have 2 to 3 moments a year per category to launch or present your products. And all such offers need to be delivered digitally in Swedish before you get invited in person. So it's shorter than 12 minutes, but I'm happy to talk with you further on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks a lot. Once my family was invited to a Swedish home, we were very, very happy. It was a lovely, lovely evening. Fantastic people, but we were quite surprised that actually tacos is the traditional Swedish food on Friday. Exactly. We were hoping for more like that, or some herring or something like that, but it turned out that tacos is traditional now. Thank you very much for being so patient. We are getting to the last presentation right now, and this is going to be the presentation by Pernilla van den Capellen from Skeppsbron Skatt. Sorry for sharing the name.
That's all right. It's a very hard company name to pronounce in English. Skeppsbron Skatt. We're also located on the street Skeppsbron in the old town. Perhaps you passed it. It's between the castle and Slussen. Very happy to be here. So my name is Pernilla van den Capellen. I'm half Dutch, so I have a Swedish first name and a Dutch last name, and working for Skeppsbron Skatt. Skeppsbron and our sister company Aspia became new members last fall. I brought my team with me. I have Alexandra and Elias here somewhere in the crowd. And I also have Jenny here from Aspia, and Aspia are sitting in the same building. So if you need Jenny, you have her here all the time. Very, very short on Skeppsbron Skatt. So we were founded in 2003. We were the first company to decide to leave the Big Four and start a company focusing only on tax. And you see, after 20 years, we're still here. So we were successful. Many others have followed after us. There are quite many now independent tax firms who focus on various different tax fields. We are a full-service tax provider, so do we do everything within tax, M&A amongst that, so we should have a chat after this. And of course, we work internationally. And since we work internationally, we're heavily dependent on our tax network tax end. And in the Nordics, even though we have a Scandinavian focus today, we have our friends with Borenius in Finland, Bäckbrun in Denmark, and Selmer in Norway. A couple of years back, Skeppsbron merged with Aspia, as Jenny presents, and Aspia is today Sweden's biggest provider within closely business-related services, so basically payroll, accounting, etc. So this is very convenient, of course, for foreign companies establishing in Sweden. First, we do the tax assessment, and then we hand over to our friends, and they can help you set up a company and do everything that's needed to be compliant. A few words just to describe how we work. We work a lot with senior presence, so a partner is not only a headcount. We are very much involved in every project, and we know our clients very well. We work with implementable solutions, so down to earth, you should be able to implement it. It's not just a product. That's very important for us. And we're very accessible, always available, maybe not in the middle of the night, but we take great proud in that we have a very swift respond time to our clients. Now, let's dig into taxes. And I mean, my background is in international tax, and I focus on individual taxation. So I help people who move in and out of Sweden, but I also have helped their employers to be compliant in Sweden. So that's my background. Of course, to give you a full tax view here, we need to talk about corporate tax, we need to talk about VAT. Those are not my main topics, so bear with me. My colleagues helped me to put together this presentation, and it's not what I'm an expert in, even though I come across the questions, of course, many times every week. So it's very important to be prepared when you come to Sweden, and you need to know things about tax. We're focusing on Scandinavia today. Unfortunately, we don't have joint tax rules within Scandinavia. I had a meeting last week with a US client who was very upset about that we don't have joint tax rules in the EU. Why do you have this EU if you don't have joint tax rules? This makes more sense to you, but it didn't make sense to them. So no, we don't have it in the Scandinavia either, but we have a joint tax treaty for the Nordics, which comes very useful because then we have everything gathered there. From a corporate tax perspective, it's very important to look into whether there's a risk for a permanent establishment. And even though we have local rulings in every country, the way of assessing a permanent establishment is quite alike between all the OECD countries, because the tax treaties are based on the same model. So here it's not only Scandinavia, it's basically a large portion of the whole world where we look upon this in the same way. But every country tends to have their little twitch to it. And that's why it's very important to always speak to a local tax expert of the specific country you're aiming to do business in. So when we look upon if there's a risk for a permanent establishment, because you really want predictability, you need to understand, do we have to pay corporate tax in Sweden? There are three main grounds. The first one is if there's a fixed place of business. And that could basically be an office where you have people working for a period exceeding 6 months, but it doesn't have to be an office as such. So 6 months is a good thumb rule to keep in mind, but you should also keep in mind that if you work within the construction business, there is an exemption for usually for 12 months, but you need to understand if it really is construction or not, so that has to be looked into. But that makes it a bit easier to plan. If you send a person to Sweden who on behalf of you can conclude and negotiate and conclude contracts, there is a risk that this person can be seen as a dependent agent. And then basically you have a fixed permanent establishment from day one. So all these things you need to take into account, because if there is a permanent establishment, you have an obligation to register for corporate taxes and you need to file tax returns. You also need to have separate accounting based on Swedish GAAP. You always have to or in most cases, you have to register for employee reporting purposes, because if there is a permanent establishment, then your employees will become tax liable from day one. I will go into that a little bit more on a specific slide. There's also an obligation to pay full social security charges at a full rate, which is very high in Sweden. It's 31.42%, and there's no cap. Hopefully, your Polish people have A1s, so it's a certificate that shows that they can still be comprised by the Polish system. Then you don't have to pay anything in Sweden, unless you employ them locally. But you should be aware of this. So that's the first one. That's corporate tax. Is there risk for a permanent establishment? Next, we look into VAT, which is definitely not my field, but I'm happy to run you through it. Again, we want predictability. Are there any risks here? When we spoke about corporate tax, we talk about permanent establishment. Within VAT, they talk about fixed establishment. It's kind of the same, but still not the same. Some different assessments are made, but we kind of come to the same conclusions, that there is an obligation to report. So a fixed establishment can be established if run by people. So you need human resources, but you also need to have technical resources, so such as a premises or equipment. And if there is a sufficient degree of permanence, so that you can actually purchase or consume goods or services, there is likely to be a fixed establishment. And if there is a fixed establishment, you then have to register for VAT and conduct filing. Within VAT, there's also an exemption for construction services, but I wouldn't say exemption here. It's actually that you have specific rules that sometimes imply that you have to report even though there's no fixed establishment. So that within the construction, there are specific rules on mandatory reverse charge. You probably know about this because we have it within all of Europe. So if you buy or sell services within the construction, you need to be aware of this because there might be an obligation to register for reverse charge. So that's VAT, and now we come to my field. Now I get a little bit more convenient, or actually a lot more convenient, and that's what obligations you have for employees and the employers. Again, we want predictability, right? So from when do we pay taxes in Sweden if you come here as a foreign employee? I think you all heard about the 183-day rule. It's something that people have been referring to for many, many years. Like, hey, I'm fine. I'm not going to spend more than 183 days in that country during a 12-month period, they say as well, or a calendar year, and that can actually differ between different country combinations and tax treaties. Well, I'm sorry, it's not that simple. EU should be the freedom of right to move. But yes, you can leave your passport at home very often, but you can't just come to Sweden and not pay taxes. It's unfortunately has become that way, and it's not just Sweden, it's every country. We're really looking to secure our taxable base. So it's a fight. It's a fight for the taxes. As I mentioned under the corporate tax slide, if there is a permanent establishment in Sweden, there is an obligation to pay taxes from day one from the employees. So this has to be budgeted for. Of course, we have different tax rates. So if they remain non-tax residents, we have a generous flat tax rate of 25%, which is quite competitive with other countries. But if they become regular tax residents because they spend so much time here, then they end up paying the progressive tax rates. And most of you know that they start at 30% and stop at 55%. That's a lot of money. If you haven't budgeted for that, no one is going to be happy in this project. But we also have the 183-day rule, and we need to look at it, of course, if it's applicable. But again, if there's permanent establishment, it's not going to be applicable. Okay, let's say there's not a permanent establishment. Can our individuals then spend up to 183 days in Sweden during a 12-month period? Well, sometimes they can, I say. But since 2021, we have a different way of looking upon these individuals and how they work in Sweden, and specifically who is gaining from this work. If we see clearly that there's a Swedish customer or a Swedish subsidiary who clearly generate from the work that they do here, and they work as a very integrated part of those companies' business, then it's quite likely that we have in Sweden what we call an economic employer. And in order to apply the exemption under an 83-day rule, there can't be an employer in Sweden. Previously, we only focused on the fiscal employer, so the employer you have your contract with, which is back in Poland, right? But now, if you look at the financial employer or the economic employer, it could be in Sweden, and then we can't apply the exemption anymore. So this makes it very hard to budget, of course. So you need to look ahead the project starting to see, will they become tax liable in Sweden? There's a small exemption, and it's the 15 and 45 workday rule. So this can actually be used for project staffing. So if they spend less than 15 consecutive workdays in Sweden and 45 workdays spread over a year in the calendar year, you don't have to look into if there's an economic employer in Sweden. So if you can keep them at a low count, most likely they will not become tax liable in Sweden. As I said, hopefully they can remain comprised by the Polish social security system with an A1 certificate. This has to be applied for from start, of course. Now, just like with corporate tax and VAT, if you have a tax obligation, you need to register, you need to conduct monthly filing, and you have to file tax returns as well. And Jenny's team are happy to assist with this payroll filing because they are specialists in expatriate payroll, so for foreign companies who have employees who become tax liable in Sweden. I also wanted to mention, and this is not a tax question, but we also have a directive within the EU called the Posted Workers Directive, basically to make sure that we have even demands on all people who work within the EU. And to make sure that people get what they are entitled to in Sweden, we need to track how long they are here. And that's why you need to register them with Arbetsmiljöverket, so the Work Environment Agency, so they can keep track on how many days they are here. Because if they spend too much time here, they are entitled to benefits under the Swedish labor law legislation. And this is good to know, because then you need to pay vacation and pension and possibly parental benefits and all this based on the Swedish ruling, which might be more expensive than in Poland. So again, you need to budget for it. There was a very big change introduced in 2021, and actually the three present slides that I went through, the corporate tax, VAT, and employee tax liability, it all comes down into this F-tax obligation. So this is like the first thing you need to know, but you need to know the other things before you need to know about the F-tax. And I say new rules because for a lot of companies, it's still new rules, even though we've had them since 2021. So a foreign company who does business in Sweden and sends an invoice for services performed on Swedish ground, basically, to a Swedish customer, or a customer, doesn't matter who actually, it's if the invoice contains time for services performed in Sweden, and the foreign company does not have an F-tax certificate, then there's an obligation on the Swedish side to withhold 30% on that part of the invoice. And they need to send that to the tax agency. And then the foreign company has to claim it back because they need to show that they don't have a permanent establishment. So this comes as an unpleasant surprise, of course. It's not a big thing to apply for F-tax, but usually you don't know about it. Some of the Swedish companies don't know about that they have the obligation to withhold the 30%, but it's becoming more common now because we had the legislation for some time. So that's the first reason for applying for F-tax. And once you have applied for F-tax, you also have an obligation to file like a tax return light. So once a year, you explain to the tax agency what kind of business you have conducted in Sweden. And that gives the tax agency the possibility to determine, do you have a permanent establishment here or not? Are you obliged to pay corporate tax here? So when you apply for F-tax, it's kind of good to know if you have a permanent establishment or not, because then you need to know that you take care of all the filing requirements. So that's why we really recommend that this is looked into before you file for F-tax. Otherwise, it can come as a quite unpleasant surprise when you file the tax return light and you realize, oh, we had a corporate tax obligation here. I also would like to add that the 30% withholding has actually been questioned by the EU Commission. They think that this is violating the freedom of right to move within the EU. So this is very exciting for us, because we have also seen how hard it is for the foreign companies to understand this. And then it feels good that, okay, this was at least confirmed by the EU Commission. Now, very quickly, what happens if we're not compliant? For those who work within the construction services, your employees need IDO6 cards to get into the building sites. They will not get those if you're not compliant. If you don't have the F-tax, or if you haven't done the reporting that you need to, they will not get the IDO6. So you can't deliver on the project. You can also not participate in larger procurement processes because they have high demands on that you are compliant in Sweden. Of course, it's an employer branding issue. If your employees are tax liable, but you haven't paid taxes or haven't arranged for them to pay taxes, they're not going to be that happy. So overall, it's a damage to reputation in forms of PR. Of course, sanctions, a lot of late filing fees, administrative costs, tax surcharges, etc. And in the end, cash flow issues because you didn't budget for the tax situation in Sweden. So to finalize, I'd like to say, of course, be proactive. If you have not yet started business in Sweden, come and talk to us and we'll make a good step plan. If you're already here and you realize, ooh, we should have done our homework, well, come to us and we're happy to help you to make a health check and see, okay, this is done right. We can tweak a little bit here just to make things right. Thanks.
Pernilla. All right, thank you very much. Let's maybe begin. So I think, we can start maybe with a easy question first. So the first question would be to you to maybe tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. Maybe you should start here.
Hello, I knew it, first one. My name is Andrzej, Senator. I run since 25 years ago my consulting company, helping Polish companies entering the Swedish market and Swedish companies entering the Polish market. Since I've been living in both countries, I do have some kind of experience in terms of what works and what doesn't work in each country. That's about me.
Move one step back.
Hello, my name is Maria Goldsmith, and I'm coming from Capion and Partners. It is a family-owned business, meaning me and my husband who started it. And we are a business consulting and accounting firm, specialized on digitalization and automatization and everything within e-commerce and ERP systems. We help working with that, and I'm half Polish. That's why the interest in here. So I'm used to all of that culture shock that you can have in between. That's short about us.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Blomkvist. I'm the partner manager at Ebury. We're an international financial services company. Help business with managing FX risk and international payments.
Hi, first of all, thank you, Cherry, for inviting. My name is Sten. I'm Estonian living here in Sweden now 1 year. I established a Swedish company last year, so it's 1 year old. And to global markets, it's here lots of specialists. So I'm the guy who search for this kind of specialists. And if I have a client, then I know where to direct. So it's not only Scandinavia, it's Germany and Southeast Asia, South Korea and Japan.
Thank you. My name is Claes Ottosson. I'm from Independia law firm. I'm the founder of this firm. We pride ourselves of having the local knowledge and the global reach out and connects over the world with the professional network of our global with more than 1,400 professionals. We're 6 lawyers in my firm and we do a lot of international work. We're connecting Polish and other firms into Sweden and the other way around. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Edith Sundqvist. I'm the strategic leader and advisor with more than 20 years experience of international trade, business development, and venture cap. I'm the founder of the company Latitud Consulting and working with small and medium-sized enterprising, helping them with development of their business and trying to help them to go from complexity to equality and the easy way of going on the market, which is sometimes a tricky thing.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter von Trampe. I work for Business Blekinge, which is a part of Region Blekinge, and my job is to facilitate inbound investments, exports, and to work as a bridge between the municipalities, the region, and Business Sweden.
Hello, thank you for being here, Jerzy. I'm Stefan Rosberg, and I'm the founder of Revea. I'm an auditor, and we provide accounting and auditing, and try to be some Polish firms' financial department speaking Polish. So we have some employees that are Polish speaking, and that's we found it competitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the strong league of professionals that are here today, and we are very glad to be able to learn from your insight. So I have planned this panel in a pretty simple way that we will basically talk about 4 main aspects. The first part will be more about what to do and what not to do. The first question will be like, from your perspective, it's a very broad question, so everyone can relate and look at it from own perspective, but I think it's also a very practical thing to know. What should we do? How should we behave? You know, what should be the right way for all of us who are willing to either start a business, develop the business, or basically navigate through this environment and the culture. Like from your perspective, you can maybe even relate to some examples just to show us how to do it, what to do. Who would like to start?
Sorry. I did a small research among my clients that established here, and I would say that most of the speakers were totally spot on what to do and what not to do. I would say it's, I asked them to range first 5 things they think about when establishing a business in Sweden. And it's be trustworthy, follow rules, comply, commit for the long term and put in the resources. Hire people that speaks local language. English is very good, but not always enough. Realize that the Scandinavian countries are more different than you see at first glance. Next one.
So, like I said, I established a company here 1 year ago. So my experience, what works, it was as a newcomer, of course, I do contact with Estonians. And like I usually do, what I felt right away is I don't know who to outreach, where to go, where to have this information, what to do, all the accounting, and what works for me. Actually, it's I went a lot of events here. I just even random events. I met so many people, and then I established everything like quite well. So for me, it's like the relationship building what helps here in Sweden. I think it's in lots of countries, so yeah.
Yeah, sure. I agree with both of you. I think we've seen that Sweden is a very trust-based country, that you need to establish good relationships in order to do business here and prosper. I would also say that it's quite important to not view Scandinavia as a homogeneous market, but maybe see them very separately. Understand local nuances, preferences, in order to actually reach your end client. And then obviously we've seen, I'm from the FX side of finance, I've seen that companies that have established themselves here and are doing well have a robust strategy in place, both in terms of payment flows. We talked about that earlier as well. But as well, just the foreign exchange. It's very volatile at the moment, so a good strategy is always good.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a question of, not just a question of what we do entering the new market, because as Mikael has said before, preparing the good business plan, understanding the market, understanding the competitive situation, it's a key. Next question is how to do it. And I'd like to connect with Katarzyna, I think. I like your presentation, it was great. About culture or business culture. We understand that there is a difference between Swedish culture and Polish or other countries. But we need to understand that, as you mentioned, Scandinavia or Nordic countries, that's not one country. There is a huge difference between, for instance, between Danish business culture and the Swedish one, although the countries are neighbors. So I think understanding, have an insight, that's the first step, to understand, really understand that there is a difference in our cultures. And the next step, which is probably more important, is our ability to adapt. It's not enough to know that there is a difference. We need to adapt to what is on the other side. And trying to establish a presence in Sweden, for instance, I think we need to adapt. We cannot expect that the Swedish society, a Swedish customer will adapt to a Polish way of doing business. I think it's another way around. So having somebody local that understands local culture, not just the language, but local culture, understanding what's okay or not okay. Bragging, it's not okay in Sweden. And I've seen that. I've seen people bragging about the successes that the company has had before. Doesn't work. People in Sweden are very modest. And as you know, there is something which is called jantelagen. Don't you think you are very special? So, and we need to understand that. Lastly, there is something which is called localization. It's a general term when you move a piece of software to another country, you would translate that, but localize, meaning you have to adapt the software or the package application to local requirements, legal requirements, cultural requirements. Do the same when you move business. Don't expect to do business the way you did in Poland and expect different results. And be patient. That's my advice. Thank you.
I'll go with culture as well. No, but I would absolutely agree that culture is one of the most important parts doing business. And I would say not only culture as in the big picture, like how is Sweden, how is Poland in general, but there are different generations, like how do they work? What kind of like value proposition do you have? Are you in retail targeting for the youth? They think differently than elder people, or the other way around. Also, are you in northern Sweden, south Sweden, totally different cultures. And yeah, definitely thinking about that. Also how we like to do business and how we perceive marketing is very, very different as well. What goes in a business meeting, just one thing, I talked to a client not a long time ago that was doing business in Denmark, where it's common to take a shot after you just wrote a contract, which is just a no-go in Sweden. Or when you just signed a contract with someone, you can't just send them wine, for example, especially not when you do it with a municipality. That's something that is so common in other countries. For me, it's not strange because I'm like brought up multicultural, and that's just the way we did it. When I went with my parents to a business in Germany and Czechia or in Poland, well, that's the way you do it. In Sweden, you don't. It's just a no-go. So those things are important to consider. Absolutely.
It was a lot of really good things said already, but I would like to just summarize by saying, do your homework and keep to the plan, strategic plan which you have. I met some Polish company which was really professional and good looking at the fair, for example. And later on, when we've been trying to do business with them, unfortunately, they didn't have the focus. They didn't listen. So you have a lot of skills representative with the institution and other coaches here in Sweden who will help you, prepare you to entrance the market, but then you have to go for it and keep it. Otherwise, unfortunately, you will not just lose the business, you will lose a lot of money because actually it's costly to go for the fair, to try to entrance the market, and being surprised that I didn't succeed can be the question which is about your appearance, your way of being. So do your homework and keep it with it later on also, not just for the fair.
I would like to say that it's not very commonly known that in Sweden there are 21 regional organizations with the sole aim of helping businesses invest and export. And I've seen a number of cases where a foreign business will go directly to a municipality, which can create quite a few problems, or they go straight to Business Sweden. Now, the regional actors, they act as a bridge and as a facilitator with all of the local and regional actors, which will really help in the process and the local knowledge of what you're trying to achieve.
All right, that's very interesting. If I could just add one more thing, I believe so that taking the educated decisions, like really understanding who we are, about understanding the market and the dynamics of the market. Sometimes the right decision is not to enter the market, or maybe wait a little bit, prepare better, right? And in order to save a little bit of frustration. And so it's good to know what we are doing. I totally agree about that. We discussed about what to do, a little bit about what not to do. So I guess those two questions merged a little bit. But is there something that you would like to add specifically on what to avoid, right? When I came here, I read quite a lot of things. Usually they were like, advised in, don't interrupt people in the meetings. Swedes don't like that. Or take off your shoes when you are entering somebody's apartment, which is a cultural difference. But small things sometimes matter and make a difference. Is there something that you would like to add? Like what should we avoid in the business context?
For example, how Swedish people have holidays. You have to exactly know when they have, in the summer, there's actually nothing going on. So, and it starts, it's like mid-September when the kids are at school, and until December they're super busy, then they're resting. Then a few months after January, then they're skiing, and it's like until the midsummer. So it's you have to adapt.
Once my friend from sales, a Swede, told me that the easiest way to show everyone that you don't know what is going on, like a big flag, I don't know what's going on, is to send out prospection emails in July. Because you're clearly just communicating, I don't know that everybody's on holidays right now. Okay? Just let me...
We have an official national day, but the real national day is the midsummer. That's me for the real Swedes. The midsummer is the holiest day, I think. Yeah. So remember that. Don't look for the real one, or just look for the midsummer.
Yeah.
And I can add that take your time. I mean, don't rush. Don't expect that you will enter the Scandinavian market in 2 months and get the revenue month number 3. because it's not going to happen. Everything takes much more time than you will expect it. And it doesn't matter if you are a little company or if you are a big giant, it takes time and put this in the budget.
I have the boring thing that is it's a very important thing to avoid. That is to get in conflict with the unions. Once you get in conflict with them, they can just drag you down totally. Especially the syndicalists, that I found out that they work on a contingency fee. So if they win their case, they will have a lot, and the person in that was your employee doesn't get so much. So try to avoid getting conflict with the syndicalists, especially, and with the unions overall.
About conflict, stay away from police. That was a joke, of course. I think, there is a perception that Swedes are not very good at small talk. And I find it wrong. That's not the case. People think when you meet a Swedish potential customer, you don't do small talks, you just go down to business, which is not true. So sometimes we need to understand that what you read about in the internet or whatever, it's not really the case. I found it just today. I had small talk with a number of people. It does work. Another thing which I think was mentioned before, it's don't rush into decision making, because consensus, it's almost same thing. And I think one of the slides that you showed about decision making, I would add something that when you do it together with the team as a consensus, the total time is actually shorter. You showed that it was the same. I think it's shorter because there is no resistance within the organization to against those decisions that were made. They were part of the decision making. Maybe they don't like the decision, but still, they feel somebody has asked me, what do you think about this new functionality or new organization? So be patient. I think success doesn't come quickly, but if it does, that's on a positive side. So patience.
Yeah, definitely.
Well-known Polish. Since our firm is partly working with accounting, I would say what I cannot stress enough to our clients is always that look up your taxes. Just the thing that Skeppsbron Skatt said, all of that, basically I underwrite under that, all about employer tax, liabilities. That's one of the things that a lot of my clients, even though from the Swedish side, encounter when working with Polish firms and other country firms. For example, this 30% deductions, that's one of those things that come to us when it's already happened. And the best thing is when you can come with that question before and actually ask, okay, how does it work? Don't only think that, okay, I will send an invoice and I will get paid for it, because it doesn't always work that way. Also, in general, if you establish a business here that needs to have accounting in Sweden, it's important to just go through like what is common, what is deductible. You can always talk in that broad, bigger terms of like you need a business plan and you need to think broad and value creation. But I know this is maybe the more boring part, but it's there and you need to look at it like, what can I buy? What can I not buy? How does it work here? And have that into your budget. Not all firms are gigantic and very big. Some are just like two-person firm that want to enter into Sweden. And that's also very different in like your strategic plan and how it all works. So that's something that I would like to end with.
Anyone would like to add? No? Okay. Yeah, that's true. I mean, one of the cases when somebody mentioned that maybe, you know, being too pushy is not a good idea. On the other hand, in Poland, it's very often a signal that we want to show to our customer that we are still in touch. We want to, you know, be always like, you know, connected. So we need to find this kind of balance, right? Or like it was said by Andrzej that sometimes, you know, we can overdo it when we present ourselves and we look a little bit boasty. But on the other hand, we also need to somehow present ourselves, and this is sometimes a thin line between what's right and what's not. And for that, we need a little bit of like understanding and experience how to navigate through that. All right. I hope it helped you a little bit for those who have never heard of those first-hand hands-on experience on how to navigate through that. There's plenty of things more, and I'm sure that once you have an opportunity to follow up and talk about different context, this could be explored more. But I would like now to move to the other part, because I believe all of those things that we talked about right now, they are quite general and quite universal. But now I would like to talk a little bit about what has happened over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe over the last week, because the situation is very, very dynamic. We live in a post-pandemic, even though we almost forgot about the pandemic, but we live in a post-pandemic environment. We have some kind of issues and challenges in geopolitical domain. We have big political changes and also economic changes. And at least from my perspective, these kind of changes also impacted how we should approach, our everyday business, and at least be aware. And I was wondering if you have anything to say about what we should, focus on right now, what we should be aware of, what we should take care of, and maybe your experience, how you changed or have changed your business, or how you're planning to change your business in order to adjust to the environment that is changing all the time.
Come on. I think, you mentioned pandemic.
Yeah.
I think it has changed our behavior, generally speaking, not just business, but generally speaking. I have seen much more difficult to set up meetings with potential customers because they work from home. That's part. The other thing, it's a technology. Number of years ago, when you wanted to find something about a specific product or service, you would meet, you go to trade show. You don't need to do that anymore, especially now with AI. It's incredible easy. Whether it's efficient, I don't know, but it does work. So we are changing generally, not just in Sweden. I think all over the places, and we've seen the same in Poland. People are behaving differently partly because of pandemic, but partly because of the technology, and it's going faster and faster. So the question is, what's going to happen within 5 years, or maybe 2 years from now? So that's my experience, and again, ability to adapt is a key. If you recognize that there is a different pattern in behavior, if you don't adapt, you're going to die as a company.
Okay.
Not physically. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Good night.
Just before we leave, if you need to talk to me, if you find it interesting, I'll be here, and today is free.
I can't say that our business has changed a lot the past couple of years, but I can say that from our clients, we see a bigger awareness, I'd say, towards FX in general. Just this past week, we've seen incredible volatility. I think it's the highest since the beginning of COVID, as we mentioned earlier. We have a president in the US who imposed tariffs, and obviously this will affect the bottom line for a lot of companies when the currency is fluctuating the way it is. So I'd say from a client perspective, from our clients, we see more involvement. We see that they are looking elsewhere from the traditional banks, maybe towards Ebury, one of our competitors. So which is good for us, obviously. But yeah, I would say it's more awareness and protecting your margins and managing your risks in general, I would say.
As I can see, companies and people are more careful after COVID and being a little bit investing side as well. You got VCs and everybody not just throwing money everywhere, and the buyers' decisions are even slower. If somebody mentioned about Swedes being slow, so it's take your time, and yeah, it's finding clients is as well. It's lots of relationship building and these kinds of things. Oh.
Thank you. I'm the little negative guy. I'm all talking about problems. So when I started with the unions, and now I will say banking. Banking is a huge problem in Sweden. They overdo the compliance part of their, they overdo following the rules, and they can give you a lot of trouble if you can swiftly answer their questions about transfer, where money come from, and always check on your customers and how they pay your bills. Thank you.
We can look at this also from another perspective. Okay, world around us is changing. We have IE right now, we have digitalization, we have internet whatsoever. There is just only one thing which actually did not change that much. And this is the relationship. This is the connection between people. I mean, we cannot forget that business starts mainly with connection, with two people talking together, having interest, being curious. So don't look at the problems, look at the possibilities. If you are looking at the possibilities, then the world around looks much easier, and then you will always find a way to do business together. So from my perspective, we get a lot of tools which help us to create new businesses, to try to go around, and those possibilities with European Union is giving us of doing the business together. Try to appreciate it and take advantage of it. So this is my way of thinking.
Well, I think from a political and civil servant perspective, there should be an awareness of the fact that we have municipal politicians, we have regional politicians, and we have national politicians. Depending on where you're from and what your, shall we say, political system is like, that should be taken into account, because individuals can be a big problem when it comes to the process of establishing a business.
Else would like to add?
I could also just add with like an example from our firm with underwriting the thing with the banks. We're helping a lot of companies to start. They're coming to us with an idea and just ask, how do we start? And actually, in the last 6 months, we had 7 out of 10 firms from very, very different kind of like branches who didn't get a bank account where the banks said no. So those are like the actual numbers. Maybe that's just unlucky that all of those came to us and talked to us. I don't have like real statistics for this, of course not, but that is the truth. Compliance has gone up a lot, AML and all of that. If you have like, if you want to open a restaurant or something like that, this is a even bigger issue and bigger questions. So it's very much depending on in which category you want to work. So yeah, and also it's a very hesitant market, as you said. Customers don't really come in and just say yes anymore. They want to think about it, and they think about it once more, and then you're thinking, are you too pushy? Are you not pushy? To get them. And that is kind of a difficult market. But I think on the upside, it's actually that Europe is kind of coming together, also especially like the Baltic countries and Poland to Sweden, because we had a lot of outsourcing going to India and Philippines and so on. And now, since all of those political tendencies are coming together, companies actually take it away from there and place that outsourcing into maybe Poland and the Baltic countries from Sweden, also France, Germany. So that is actually an opportunity that is really, really great and that you can thrive on.
That's actually super interesting. And that was planned to be the next question about the future, but you again merged those two questions a little bit again. But the conclusion is from what you're saying is that actually we should be glad for Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump being in their position, because they have done more for Europe than the other politicians in a long time. Right now we've got more integration. We have like common security and safety policies, etc. We are talking about deregulation, etc. So there's opportunity maybe in every situation. We need to be able to adjust, as Andrzej said, but we should also look for opportunities. And this is also true that Sweden and Poland actually get closer to each other. We can observe that there's more collaboration. There is more, let's say, collaboration on the political level or a business level, and I think it's the time to improve even more the relations. Some even say that right now we could benefit from the difficult situation in the US, and like, let's say, the scientists that no longer work there or want to work there or can work there, maybe they could come to Europe and help us develop a little bit. And also maybe some people who are the labor and workforce that cannot be there and they are Europeans, they could also come back. Maybe you can become a little bit stronger thanks to all the difficult situation that is right now happening. All right, I think we have like a couple of more minutes, so this is the last maybe chance to talk about I was thinking that maybe at the end it would be nice if you could share some cases, maybe some anecdotes or some examples of good cross-border collaboration from your experience, from your businesses, from your companies, that maybe we should, end this event on an optimistic note. Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, I work for an international firm. We have clients in over 30 countries, so cross-border collaboration is almost inevitable for us. But the way you mentioned as well, that I think Europe is coming together even more now, and we can see that internally within us ourselves as well. We see a lot more trade going back and forth. People actually wanting to reach out. Maybe it's because of the lockdown for a couple of years ago that people are in need of personal relations. But I do see it's positive, and I think there's a way to work together if there is a will, even if it's cross-border, if it's between Sweden and Poland, which we've seen a lot, obviously, with a lot of trade going back and forth and sharing of experiences and labor. But I do think, I've seen it a lot. Can't come up with a single example at the moment, but I've seen it a lot, yeah.
Well, let's say maybe I have a little bit last experience with Korean, so it's not Polish, but language side, if it's like people don't speak English too much, and then it's quite difficult. It's like let's say lots of smiling, but actually they don't understand. And it's I'm doing more between Europe and Asia, and in that case I feel a lot that's Asian people. It's like Scandinavia generally. They don't think it like it's Sweden and Norway and Finland. So there is lots of teaching in that side. I can see. Inside of Europe, like say, I'm from politics, so I've been working with Sweden 15-20 years, But when I came to live here, so I understood more why Sweden is closed. Before that, is I just talk with people and everything is like normal. But if here, you can feel how close is like say this society, that everybody helping each other. So yeah.
I can share some story of cultural impact on the business. Few years ago, I've been working with the Swedish company trade in 120 countries around the world, and we had a visit from Spain, and we invited our customers for a nice lunch with the salmon and fancy things. And everything went really well, and everybody was happy. But a few months later, I met the same customer on another event, and he get me a little bit offside and told me, you know what, the meeting in Sweden was really good, but I really would like to have some beef and red wine to the lunch. So please give me an option.
Last round.
I don't have any personal experience like that, but I had 3 things that I actually wanted to share. 3 insights that we talked about before I came here, and that was that in Sweden we actually have, I don't know, this is not a positive thing, but it's something to look out for, and nobody mentioned it before. So we have this thing that is like a public procurement. I don't know if you've heard about it, but in Sweden it's called upphandling. So I have seen very many firms that want to come with a product to Sweden that, for example, could be like a bench outside, like that you have in public centers. And then municipalities have like this public procurement that they have a firm that they collaborate with, and there's like no way to enter that. So depending on what you want to sell, this is something real that you actually should look into. So it's not a product where like the market is already filled. That's one thing. And then we have ESG reporting. It's something that is quite new, and it's going to happen. It's here, it's real. Many firms don't really want to talk about it and don't think about it, but it's important. And I think it will be even more important in Sweden, since Sweden is a country where the environment and all of that is very important for many customers. So I think maybe it's not that important for B2B, but for the end customer that actually buys a product, it will be very important. And the last thing is that that's something that we have seen at our firm, is that since everyone is checking out numbers and want to save money now because the situation, and I think the stock market dropped the same amount as at 9/11 today, actually. So it hasn't happened since then. Tech companies, I think, and IT companies from Poland can have a real great advantage in Sweden. We have great IT minds here as well, but I think that they can come at a better price and be more customer tailored actually to the needs of Swedish companies. So that's just a key insight that we really have seen the needs at our firm.
This is my last one. My personal reflection, I used to live in Sweden, here in Stockholm, actually. So what I'm saying is now is from my Swedish perspective. Poland has a very good connotation in Sweden. We need to remember that. When people talk about, and we have a common history as well, which is probably like 500-600 years old, but still. Probably you know that the guy who moved the capital from Krakow to Warsaw was Swedish king. So there is a positive connotation, and if you talk about other countries in former Eastern Bloc, who thinks about Hungarian or people from Czech Republic or Polish people have a very good reputation in Sweden. There are of course examples where they're not, but generally speaking, and we need to use that because this is a question of being credible as well. Credibility and trust, which is a thing which doesn't happen in Poland so often, but still, we need to understand Sweden it's a very specific country, and try to adapt and use that positive connotation to do business. That was a positive thing, right? Good.
One final.
I just would like to add that Sweden and Scandinavian is a great market. It's a great market with a lot of opportunities for company if all different branches. If you are doing your homework, if you are really getting help and have time, you are patient, you will succeed here, because Scandinavia is very special because it's very open and it's curious about different kind of products, different kind of way of doing business. But you have to be open and reliable as well. If you can offer the high quality product, if you can show that we can rely on you, the business here is really great. So go for it.
Thank you very much. I think, the panelists deserve a nice applause. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you that were involved today. Thank you to Hans-Jakob Bonnier for the opening speech. Thanks, Jerry, for organizing this event. Thanks to Dana Rogoza for preparing great cake. Thanks to Mats Vara for streaming 90% of the event. And thanks to you that you participated. Thank you very much and see you next time.